Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Pennsylvania and Berwind. This is episode number 29, and in this episode, we're going to do some detailing around Allegheny, some final detailing, because this is going to be the last build episode on the P&B for a little bit. This is going to conclude the areas that we have finished, that we have completed over the last 29 episodes, if you can believe that, over a year and a half span. I'm finally getting to a point where I feel like this is complete enough that I can release it in its current state. And feel kind of decent about it, I guess. I don't know, there's still tons and tons of work to do, pretty much all over the route, let alone just in Allegheny, you know, what we're looking at here. There's still a lot of areas that need to be detailed, but I'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. But as I had said, this is going to be the last build episode. Right now I'm focusing on actually beta testing this. I have this route actually sent out to a few people who are taking a look at it and telling me what kind of stuff is missing or broken, or needs changing or updating. So we are working on that right now, and I should have a release for you guys, hopefully sometime in July, maybe by the end of July is really my goal. And I'm just trying to take as much time as possible to make sure that it is as stable as possible and as enjoyable as possible for everybody, and as little of a headache to find assets if any assets need to be found. So far, testing has been very successful, and we haven't had any missing assets or dependencies or anything like that is causing any headaches. There is a bit of work that I need to do that's kind of like maintenance-y type work. I gotta add some track marks, some speed limits, I gotta adjust some signaling, and some little things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I'll be working on before episode 30 goes live. And episode 30 is probably just gonna be like a release video with a whole bunch of cinematics and eye candy and that sort of thing, and that'll kind of wrap things up. And as I said, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break from the P&B for a little while. I'm going to let this sort of section kind of run itself for a little bit, get it out to the community, see what you guys think, maybe make some adjustments before continuing onward to the next couple of sections of the P&B. There's tons and tons of work to do. If you guys want to look into it, there's a link in the description of this video that'll take you to all of the paperwork that's associated with the P&B, so a timetable, track schematics, track maps, track plan, all that kind of stuff. So you can take a look at it and see exactly what kind of work is left to do, because there is just tons and tons and tons to do. But anyway, in the final video, I will outline some operations and stuff like that could be kind of fun to do. And even before that, I plan to do some live streams on the map here to do some sort of live beta testing with you guys. So we'll run some trains and we'll just kind of test some stuff out, make sure nothing's broken, and, you know, the track actually works the way that it should, and signals kind of work the way that they should, that sort of thing. So lots of stuff in store. And in the meantime, well, not in the meantime, well, after the P&B, like I had previously said, I'm going to focus a little bit more on my Dry Brook and Esopus Valley route, which I had previously been doing live stream only. I am going to do some videos on that, so you guys can look forward to that. Those are going to be a totally different format than what I've been doing here on the P&B. I haven't started shooting anything for it, so I can't really get into a description of how I'm going to do it, but I already know in my head it's going to be very different. We're going to cover a lot more ground a lot faster, and it's going to be what I'm going to call a hyper-detailed map. I'm really just going to go completely crazy detailing this map, so that's going to be a lot of fun to do, and I'm going to try to do it quickly, but that'll be in the interim before we come back to the P&B. Anyway, I think that is probably the main announcement sort of stuff to mention about I don't know, wrapping up the P&B here and what you guys can expect coming forward, or going forward, not coming forward. Can you come forward? Maybe you can. Anyway, what are we doing here? We're doing some detail work around Allegheny. As I had said previously, there is still so much to do, and I'm not completely satisfied with the state that this little city is actually in. I really would love to add a lot more details, and there's a lot of areas that are still pretty blank, like a lot of these sort of pavement areas like we're looking at here. A little bit further away from the tracks, I tried to do everything I could to put details near the tracks, but obviously you guys know my style. The further away you go from the tracks, the less detail you're gonna get. So with that in mind, hopefully you guys don't venture too far away from the tracks in Allegheny. Again, I was trying to keep it sort of minimalistic, just because there's so many assets taking place in Allegheny as it is, that I'm trying to be conscious of performance and that sort of thing. So In the future, I'm probably going to revisit a lot of these builds and update them, like as I'm doing some of the beta testing and I'm looking at some of my original builds, like back from, episode 2, 3, 4, even episode like 15. The assets that I was using are very different than the assets that I'm using now. These pavement asset textures and some of the detail items and stuff that I'm using, grasses, and a lot of stuff has changed, and I'm trying to resist the urge and the temptation to actually go back and make all those changes and update stuff that I'd already done, but if I had done that, it would just be a never-ending process. I'd never get anything, never make any progress getting anywhere. So anyway, in this area that we're looking at here, I thought it'd be kind of neat to do like a little junkyard. Not like a junkyard, but sort of like another abandoned little alleyway, backyard, parking lot sort of thing. I feel like I see a lot of these things all over the place. I was actually just rail fanning, not really rail fanning. I rode my bike up to Goodman Yard here in Rochester. I was just hanging out. There's a big parking lot nearby, and I was just hanging out there. And I happened to just notice that certain sections of it were sort of blocked off. It was still, one big parking lot. It was open for everybody, but there were some sections that were sort of isolated from others that just had crap strewn all about it, like just piles of garbage and whatever else, debris, metal, scrap, all kinds of stuff like that. So having said that, I kind of carried that theme into our port over here, which I was thinking was very blank and in need of some serious updating, and has been driving me nuts for a little while. So in keeping the theme on the rest of the port of this sort of like wavering industry, sort of semi-abandoned sort of thing, I wanted to dress this area up and decorate it in such a way that it looks way more abandoned, but not demolished yet. So one of the things that I had in mind, interestingly enough, was when I was a kid, there was an IBM, it was from IBM, it was a rec center, so it was an old IBM rec center in the town that I lived in. And we used to go there when I was a kid all the time, and it was very popular. And sometime in the early 90s or something like that, IBM didn't go out of business, but they left town, and when they left town, all the money left, so the rec center went out of business and that sort of thing. And in my late teen years, I'd go back to this rec center, which had been abandoned for, 10 years or something like that, and just look at how these parking lots and the pool facilities and whatever other stuff that they had there, the entertainment centers and stuff like that, had just kind of been taken over by the earth and grown in, just due to the plain old lack of maintenance. Nobody was going to go in there and bulldoze the place. The structures were still there, but nature was coming and taking over. So when I was doing this section, I kind of had that in mind, and you'll see it in a moment as I add some of these cracks into the asphalt. And I'm actually going to start using some of the grassy, I'm talking ahead of myself a little bit. I actually use some of these grassy trackside splines. We'll get to that in a minute. Here we go. This is starting it. So this is how I begin to develop it. I thought, let me just bring in some grass textures and stuff like that around the buildings, and just kind of see how that looks, make it look like it hasn't been maintained in a while. And I liked those the Jersey barriers too that kind of block off an area, because I've been seeing a lot of that, like I said, when I was out rail fanning at that parking lot by the yard. So using these old Jersey barriers that haven't been maintained for a while, and I just started to get really carried away with it, I guess. So this is the part that I was thinking about here, is I began to add some cracks into the road in certain patterns here, and using these grassy trackside splines, kind of tracing out where the weeds kind of grew up through the pavement. And if you ever look at a parking lot that is in this sort of condition, you'll notice that they do tend to break apart in these kind of like parallel lines or perpendicular lines that sort of intersect. It's not quite a grid, and it's not quite even, but the roads usually tend to follow some kind of like a crack pattern. So that's what I was trying to do there, and I was trying to just, use the grass and stuff like that to highlight that sort of feel, as well as just adding in some like pieces of scrap metal and other sorts of debris like that to further enhance that. And by the end of that build, you'll see it in some cinematics here at the end. It is definitely my favorite new build, and I'm gonna keep that in mind from now on with some of these sort of abandoned areas. Just using that technique of putting the cracked road texture down, and then using those splines to kind of make some weeds growing out of the cracks and that sort of thing. So now moving on to this section here. This is just adjacent to the yard. I know I said I wasn't gonna add street or sidewalks and a lot of splines and stuff like that to this area, but it was just so bland. I didn't know what to do, so I had to add some sidewalks in, and I added some power lines here, and I think it makes a big difference in terms of like what the area looks like. It's not as flat, so it kind of has a little bit more of a dimension to it, but it is kind of a pain to have these splines kind of like layered up on top of each other. Power line splines, the road splines, and then the sidewalk splines. And there's a lot of details that I wanted to include in here. Like I was thinking about adding like a patio area for like a restaurant with like outdoor seating and stuff like that, but I couldn't find any good assets for like a restaurant. I could find like patio assets like what do you call them, benches or picnic tables and umbrellas and stuff like that, but I couldn't find like a good American looking like restaurant or bar or something like that. There was a lot of European style pubs and that kind of thing, but I didn't want to use like a McDonald's or something like that because I didn't feel like that had any place there. I'm picturing something like some of the places I used to go to in New York City that are like right on the sidewalk. You can kind of sit outside, have a drink, have some, food, and just enjoy the weather and hang out. But unfortunately, I couldn't find any of that. But that's something that maybe over time, again, I can come back and add that in as I do find assets, because every day there's new assets being uploaded to the download station. Some of you guys send me send me links to new assets on Discord and point things out to me. So, I'm constantly finding new stuff. So at some point, I'm sure, especially after mentioning it now, somebody will point something out to me and I can go back and I can add it. But again, it pretty much preliminary work or primary work right now on the PNB is done. I'm not gonna do any more building. It's just kind of maintenance stuff until we get back into it. But this back area, as I mentioned in the beginning, and now we've moved away from that clip, that back area, I just pretty much left it as it is, unfortunately. So don't go back over there. I don't like the way that it looks, and I just ran out of ideas for what I even could place there. But let's see, where are we now? So this was back to the oil refining sort of area. I don't really know what I had in mind for this, what the function is here, but I thought there would be some kind of an oil refining plant or distribution center or something like that. So I just thought it'd be fun to add a little bit more piping details and tanks and things like that. But I think that is going to bring us right into the cinematics. I got about 2 minutes of cinematics lined up for you at the end of this. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have, please hit that like button, and please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I will see you guys in the next episode.